If your in person event is not selling out, maybe it's time for you to stop blaming the algorithm. You may not have so much of a marketing problem as a conversion problem. Welcome back to Humans of Growth. I'm your host, Ali Hathcock, and today's episode is sponsored by Parison Network, the free and new way for brands to find the perfect fit marketing agency. For those times when you know that you need marketing help, but you don't actually know who to trust. Now, for today's episode, I have brought in Brian Bauer, the CEO over at Bauer Entertainment Marketing. And this conversation is a little bit of a gut check for anyone who sells tickets. We talk about why impressions don't mean a dang thing when your seats are empty, your marketing funnel that should be built to drive ticket sales and not awareness of your event, and the real reason why people just don't buy. If you are running in-person events, whether it's concerts, games, festivals, shows, you name it, this is your playbook. Let's dive into it. Today's guest is Brian Bauer. Brian is the CEO over at Bauer Entertainment Marketing. And if you're not familiar yet, Bauer Entertainment Marketing helps music, sports, and live event companies sell more tickets by understanding how fans actually decide to buy. Brian, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. No, really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I introduced a little of the professional side of you, but tell me in a sentence or two, who are you as a human? What is bringing you joy right now?
So is it a human? My, kind of the core motivator and thing that I've always really been passionate about is bringing people together for shared experiences and doing stuff with friends and family, and I've been able to turn that into a profession. So it's pretty rad for me. But yeah, I grew up third generation drummer, son of a piano teacher, in kind of mostly Chicagoland. I kind of hopped around pretty early on, but spent my formative years, if you will, in the north burbs of Chicago, and going through that experience and having a family that really supported the arts and encouraged me to kind of pursue that joy and that fandom and experiencing live events. I caught the bug pretty early on, and I've been, in it to win it ever since. So yeah, whether I'm doing it as a job or just going to shows, that's, you'll find me in the pit.
So it sounds like you have always been fan first before you ever became marketer in this industry.
Totally. Yeah. I've been extremely passionate around, just kind of, again, live events. And I before I was ever marketing, I was playing and I was performing and touring and recording, from the basement of my, house to the stage of, major festivals and stuff like that. So it's just kind of been a really sweet ride, but I've gotten to see it from a bunch of different angles, and that's been my journey.
Wait, what instruments did you play?
So primarily drums.
Okay.
But piano, I did some bass guitar as well. I've tried to fake my way through learning guitar.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yep.
no, drums is really kind of my thing.
So what was the pain point or even maybe the opportunity that you saw that made you want to form a marketing agency?
Well, zooming out to when I was playing music professionally and kind of touring and on the road, to actually make money, I would manage social media pages for companies from law firms and insurance brokerages and things like that, right? Totally unrelated, but it was very much in the time of, if you're not on social media, you're not a business. And that really opened up a world to me where it's like, okay, cool. I can do this from wherever, whenever. There is a true need and value that's being delivered through this. I got the opportunity then to, when one of, the band that I was in dissolved, I had the opportunity to then join a marketing company in Nashville, that was owned by a ticketing agency. So like a ticketing software company, kind of a independent but direct competitor to Ticketmaster. And so they owned this company and they needed some marketing support. So it really kind of married everything that I was into, right? I was doing marketing, but it was also oriented towards bringing people together and live events. And so that experience, essentially, I was agency director there for several years and running an agency that it wasn't mine, but it was, I was spearheading it, and it was really, really, really valuable experience to kind of learn how that worked. But I didn't have to risk my own money to do it, right? Like I got to learn those lessons and hard lessons on somebody else's dime. So that really spurned then the confidence and the ability to launch my own thing.
I love it. So when I look at agencies across different industries, a lot of them stop with impressions and clicks. And to some degree, that has been normalized. There's a separation of marketing versus sales. What have you seen in the music entertainment industry? Is that still the norm? Have you seen that start to shift where marketing agencies also become more responsible for sales?
Yeah, the vanity metrics of likes and follows and impressions and things like that are they're valuable to a point, to a degree, but the bottom line's the bottom line, right? And we live in a world of ticket sales, and the room has to be filled, and so we do, and candidly, I think that's what makes our agency particularly unique in this space, because there are. I think you're spot on that it's typical, or it is the norm, to really focus on, well, hey, we drove a bunch of traffic, or we, presented this to a bunch of, eyeballs, but it's not about performance. And so we've really, truly rooted ourselves in results and being data oriented from that perspective. And that is, that's really our main differentiator, I would say, in this industry, is how tied we are to ticket sales, particularly as our key metric. And so we have kind of dubbed this the fan funnel formula, where it truly is a full funneled perspective of what a fan goes through from their first impression to entering that credit card and buying the ticket and beyond. I do think that it's a common pitfall for a lot of marketers to sort of just look at it as, well, our social posts or emails or whatever, it brought a bunch of people, it brought the horse to water, but whether it drank or not is kind of on you guys. Well, we don't stop there. It's really a full funneled perspective. And so it's totally rooted in conversions.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is we're seeing now more and more creators, whether they're musicians, whether they're comedians, you name it, they build massive audiences, and that's great. But then, and so they get the impressions, they get the views, but then they really have issues when it comes to how do I turn this into sales?
Yeah.
I think okay, go ahead.
And I'll add on some color to that. Is it's particularly challenging, I would say, for artists, right? Like, we live in a funky industry and world where it's art meets commerce, and it's a struggle for a lot, particularly for artists when the barrier to entry is so low. There's more content being produced than ever before, and so when there's that much competition, it is very easy for somebody to maybe hear a song or a snippet of something once and move on, and you'll never hear from them again, right? So impressions are easy. What's difficult is fandom and loyalty and actual true deep connection, so that they will buy a ticket, right? And there's enough trust established and familiarity there for that long-term relationship. And so that's just extremely difficult in the landscape when there's just so much to be consumed, is so much, so many things out there vying for people's attention. So yeah, that's all that much more important to root things in performance.
And especially, I think that's true with live events. I have a lot of people here. We're both in Nashville. There's 1,000 events every night here. And the reality is we only have 7 days a week. And there's only so many events we can go to. And then on top of that, everything, especially in Nashville, you can't walk out your front door without spending $50.
It's getting more and more expensive. and everybody's vying for the same wallet. So it's very challenging. It does create an atmosphere where, again, just impressions, and attention alone is not going to cut it. Now I don't want to take away from the importance of that, right? Because there is, again, the journey that a fan goes through. They have to become aware of something before they then can consider it and then buy it. But it is a funnel, right? It is a process that a fan goes through. And I think that's a very common pitfall, that people just sort of say, hey, well, I presented it to them and they didn't buy. I guess I got to move on.
Yep.
And it's like, y'all, you got to, wine and dine a little bit first,
Right, absolutely. So let's dive into the fan funnel formula, the 3 Fs. On a high level, tell me a little bit, what is that?
So it's truly our data-driven perspective on how do you not just, again, drive a fan to the site and then move on. It's a more analytical look at what are they doing once they're there, and how are they engaging at the destination? Because we could spend so much time, energy, effort, money on everything that gets them there. All these sources, from digital ads, email, social, billboard, whatever, they're all pointing fans to a destination to consider buying a ticket. And if there's an issue with the checkout flow, or if there's a problem with the offer, or if there's some roadblock getting in the way of that conversion, well, then it's all for naught. And so we look at kind of a bottom-up perspective, right? So we look at the conversion first and analyze, what is that checkout flow process like? And for instance, we understand that for every click required to buy, there's typically a 33% drop-off with every step. And so the more we can streamline that and reverse engineer the process to convert, well, then all of the, again, advertising, social, email, everything is going to be infinitely more effective because of the bottom of funnel working effectively and efficiently, right? So that's kind of the formula, or the ethos that we take to our campaigns. And it's ongoing. Like, there is no set it and forget it situation. Like, that just ain't gonna cut it, right? And there's no cookie cutter approach. Every event is different. Every campaign requires kind of hands-on optimization as the campaigns progress, and looking at the numbers. And so we know, for instance, like, every order on average is about 2.7 tickets. Well, if we're getting people to convert and it's only at like 1.3 tickets per order, well, gosh, there's a big problem there. And so we need to address that kind of stuff. But it's looking at it as the full funnel. And why is that? Why aren't people buying more around the standard of group tickets, right? Or is there something with our approach for the creative or the offer that could entice people to bring their friends and family to an event more than what they would perhaps consider or have been considering?
I like it. So let's start at the bottom of the funnel, because we're essentially reverse engineering from what it sounds like. I just bought tickets today for Lucy Darling here somewhere in Nashville. Tickets just went on sale and they were halfway sold out within 10 minutes. With that, it always drives me to Ticketmaster or to Live Nation or to the theater's checkout page of where I'm actually buying the tickets. So what does it look like for me to optimize that bottom half of the funnel, like the sales process, when it is third-party software?
Well, so I'll take this approach to that question a little bit, right? So in part, it depends on where you're at already when it's the on sale, with regard to, are you first getting introduced to this artist, or are you already a fan, or are you already familiar, right? And so we tend to drive those different audiences to different destinations. And so if you're first getting presented, right, if you're in that kind of top of funnel awareness group, we're going to send you to the venue's website so you can learn more. There's typically more information on there about the venue, parking, blah, 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 et cetera, right? Whereas if you're more of a fan, you're committed, you're more of a kind of in that super fandom realm where you would perhaps invest even more than a typical fan. You'd maybe go for that VIP ticket, that kind of thing. Well, that's that bottom of funnel audience, and we're going to send you directly to Ticketmaster because we know that there's one less click required, right? So we're going to see a higher conversion there. You don't need as much information. So we segment our audiences from that perspective. But yeah, I think with the software piece of it, right? Like certainly we are going to segment and send you to the place where that aligns with where you're at along the buying cycle.
Okay.
But we also know that every ticketing software has its own challenges and things like that when it comes to things like attribution, right? So for instance, if we send you to the marketing site first before you get to the ticketing site, we're going to lose any like queries when it comes to like cookie-based tracking and things like that. So those UTM, codes, like that's going to be an issue because now you're clicking one step over and we don't get that attribution as clearly. So there's challenges when it kicks you to like third-party sites from a marketer's perspective. We just, we know the workarounds and kind of things to help combat that. But that's another factor or consideration that we take into account.
So we did talk about bottom of funnel. So middle of funnel, what should that look like? People know you exist. They already have the brand awareness. They like you. What does marketing look like? So
that consideration phase, that's kind of the big fat middle and frankly often gets ignored by event producers.
Yep.
For folks that are aware of an event, but they're just not yet ready to buy, that audience, they need more fun, engaging, trust-building things and content. So we'll do contests, we'll do videos, we'll encourage them to RSVP for the Facebook event, things that, are kind of breadcrumbs to get them further along, to build the familiarity, to help them connect with other fans so that there's more of social proof established. But ultimately it's trust building, it's brand building. It's guiding them towards the direction of, all right, there's been enough interaction where, now it's time to retarget and have a little bit more of a direct sale.
Okay. When it comes to middle of funnel, what channels do you see working apart from traditional social media?
So yeah, we love a contest. That's always great. I do think a lot of it boils down to, not necessarily channel specific, but more offer specific.
Okay.
So for instance, it's a really great time, when we're in that maintenance phase, right? Where that's kind of like, all right, we've done a big announcement, a show is happening. People, we've kind of captured a lot of the, fans that were going to buy regardless, but they wanted the best seats. They wanted to kind of invest early. Great. We got that core group. And then we've also publicized this to the world. So we've got a big announcement and awareness group. For that maintenance phase that comes next, that's really heavily focused on consideration. Mm-hmm. And so for those folks, we will develop, limited time offers. So for instance, a bundle specifically catered towards a particular artist that's on the bill. So again, I'm thinking a little bit more oriented towards festivals, okay, where you can have something like, an artist's merch with a custom, digital video message from them, and a branded section of the festival grounds for that artist that they curate, and maybe there's a special drink or food package, something like that, but it's only available for the next week and it's specifically for fans of that artist. And it just gives people an opportunity to buy something that it elevates the value, it elevates the scarcity and the urgency. And so we do see driving more of that consideration audience into a conversion kind of mindset.
What offers do you see work really well, and what offers have you seen that people have tried and they consistently fail?
Good question. I'm trying to think. I think it's so case by case, which makes it tough, right? But like, fail in terms of a profitability problem, right? Like sometimes people are too quick to discount. There's an inadvertent training of an audience of when you're throwing out last minute discount tickets and that kind of stuff. Then the next time there's an event, they're going to wait. They're not going to buy right when you go on sale, because they will have been trained to know that, hey, tickets are going to go go for much cheaper as we get closer to the event and it's not selling out and that kind of stuff. So that's a common pitfall. And to combat that, we encourage, if you are going to discount, partner with a third party, right? Do it through, a source that is like, it just comes to mind, but like a Groupon or a Costco or something like that, where you're still maintaining the value from the primary source, right? You're not devaluing your ticket, but it's still out in the marketplace that there's a lesser ticket. And you can potentially promote it saying, hey, thanks to our sponsor or whatever, we've got, these limited amount of reduced price tickets at the, for these seating areas and that kind of stuff. So there's workarounds there to maintain the value. I think that works to help combat something that often doesn't work.
I like that, because I do see, especially here in Nashville, where there's constant events, artists will discount tickets pretty quickly because they get nervous of like, is this going to fill up, or am I going to be playing to an empty room? Totally. And from what I've heard, I've only been in Nashville a couple years now, but Nashville is a harder city to get people to show up in, for sure. And the last thing anybody ever wants to do is play to an empty room.
Yep. Yeah. It's many people use their tickets as loss leaders, and then they just make their money off of things like merch or concessions and that kind of stuff. So even parking.
Hey guys, real quick, this episode is sponsored by Parison Network. Parison Network is a matchmaking service that connects businesses to marketing agencies that will actually get you results. There's over 50,000 agencies in the United States alone, and picking the right one can feel, well, pretty impossible. Parison Network simplifies the entire process by doing all of the vetting for you. From the initial agency search to interviewing and vetting the top marketing agencies to getting proposals and helping you with the discovery call, Parison Network does it all. This way, you end up partnering with a marketing agency that actually delivers outcomes, not empty promises. If you're ready to stop wasting money on marketing that just doesn't work, visit ParisonNetwork.com and get your free agency search started today. That's ParisonNetwork.com, PERISSON Network.com.
A lot of venues offer like membership programs for that reason, to have more consistent revenue. It's a tough biz. But yeah, nobody wants to play for an empty room. Nobody wins,
Absolutely. So what does top of funnel look like then?
So, top of funnel, we really aim to, cast a pretty wide net, and it's really oriented towards, affinities and interests related to, as broad as genres or, I don't want to totally ignore the sports world, right? So like it can even just be as general as the sport or adjacent sports. It's going pretty broad, but one of the things that we'll do pretty regularly as well is we'll exclude those that, are already aware or that have engaged in the past, something like that, so that we can reach incremental audiences and new fans. Okay. Because there's churn that happens, right? Like, we have to consistently be bringing in more folks to, know that this thing exists. And people move, people, change their contact info. So it's really, really key for us to be able to maintain that top of funnel and feed it pretty heavily so that we do have a middle and bottom of funnel to target.
Right. So if someone had $1,000 or even $10,000 a month to spend on advertising, top, middle, bottom of funnel, how would you split it?
Well, I would I'm gonna be contrarian and start with like
Okay.
goals, right?
Totally.
So for us, again, going back to the reverse engineering piece of it, we look at like, well, how many tickets do you want to sell, right? Like what does
Hmm.
that look like? And then we break it down where it's like, all right, well, if we know it's this many tickets, and again, 2.7 tickets per order on average, well, now we know how many orders we need to convert. Typically, about 2% of traffic will convert into an order, right? So now we
Yep.
know how many clicks essentially we need to drive to the site in order to achieve that goal. And then we can compare that to cost per clicks, and that'll give you a sense of, all right, well, to meet that goal, this is how much you need to spend. Now you can totally, calculate that the other way, where it's like, all right, well, if I have $1,000, it's going to be this much traffic, and 2% of that converts into an order. That many orders equates to this many tickets. And so we would start there,
Okay.
and then we would say, all right, well, based off of that, because frankly, I would say $1,000, you're not going to be able to divide that in a meaningful way between top, middle, and bottom, right? Like, and if we have to cut things, it's usually middle. So,
Okay.
Top and bottom. And then timing wise too, you got to think about, all right, on a daily basis, how many people are we going to be able to drive for that? And so oftentimes, for a smaller budget, we'll do a push at the on sale, and then we'll pause. We won't serve ads again until we get closer to that ramp up phase, right before the event, because that mirrors buying cycles for live events. Again, you're going to get that big spike when you first announce this thing. You're going to get those core fans that are most excited. You're going to get some early folks that are like, cool, I want the best seats. And then interest wanes and it moves on to the next big announcement or something else going on. Only until the event is about to happen does it pick back up again. And so from an advertising perspective, we look at it as like, well, how can we amplify that, right? Like, how can we make good great? And so that's why we spend the money around that event ticket sale life cycle, as opposed to trying to like make the maintenance phase or, when people are
Right.
not as interested, trying to fight, swim upstream. That's what we found to work most effectively.
I like it. So when you have the other aspect of musicians, artists, they travel and they're performing at 50 cities in 50 weeks or 50 cities in 25 weeks. A lot of times is what we now see. How do you go about running not 50, but 5, 10, 15 campaigns all at once and figuring out how do we make these decisions when XYZ is our budget of how do you make all that come together?
Yeah. Well, step one, be very careful not to name the wrong city for the wrong ad campaign or anything like that.
Fair.
It is, I mean, that's the most challenging thing about tours is really just the organization. It is a lot going on, and especially, a lot of tours announce all of them at once, right? Even despite when the dates are actually happening. They want to go on sale for the full tour and make a big impact. And so all of the markets are going on sale all at the same time, which, it's very, very, very front loaded. And so, yes, there are economies of scale, but every single market will have its distinct budget because you're not going to spend as much in a secondary or tertiary as you would in a primary. And then, each one has to have, custom creative, right? And so the advertising materials, or ad mats for short, it's going to have the city and the date and the, links, and everything is got to be unique. And so there's a lot of collaboration between the tour and the venues themselves, right? Because each one of them could very easily have a different ticketing platform. So you have to make sure that it's all built, and you have to have the right tracking in place and codes and all that kind of stuff. So again, very, very front loaded. And then, when you go on, it's great when a few of the markets sell out right away, right? It's you get to wipe your brow a little bit, but, there's inevitably the underperforming markets. And so then you take a look at, I think one of the greatest things about tour marketing and tour advertising is that you get to see what's working across the board, right? You get that insight as to, all right, well, man, what they're doing in Shreveport would work really well in Chicago.
Okay.
And so there's additional insight there from looking at it from that perspective. So that's the process, but it's like, you can never be too organized, and you always have to communicate with, over communication. Really, there is almost no such thing.
Based upon what you've seen, do you like the method of we're releasing all of our tour dates all at once for the next 6 months, or do you like the idea of dripping them out slowly over time?
Ooh, man, it's yes, you're probably going to get a little bit extra, buzz and impact by announcing them all at the same time.
Okay.
So I lean towards that, even though it's more challenging from a marketing execution perspective, just bandwidth and capacity wise. But I do say that probably the collection of attention and online chatter and engagement, like, it builds on itself, and there's extra tickets to be sold just based off of that word of mouth that happens because of it.
Okay, I like it. So pivoting a little bit out of funnels, where do you see that entertainment brands tend to leak revenue the most without realizing it?
I think pricing is a big problem, and so I'll correlate that a little bit towards one of the more common things that we consult on is how much they should spend on their advertising to actually fill the room. And so, yeah, I would say it's certainly like pricing of the tickets, but it's just budgeting overall. I think it's just the kind of the economics. I think that it's a lot of, hey, well, we're going to look at what this show charged others the last time it was in town, or hey, we're seeing what the other venues are charging their customers, and that's how they're kind of basing a lot of their prices on. Or they're just sort of maybe talking to the agent and saying, hey, what would you recommend that we price this at? It's right. So that's super, super common, and it's just a total misstep, I think, in terms of like how they should be valuing it and pricing their events in a way for it to actually align with their capacity and the actual acquisition costs and things like that to fill a space. It's like, hey, we've got this 3,000 capacity theater and we have $1,000 to spend on advertising. It's like, well, dude, how did you even land on that number? It's like, oh, well, that's what we've always done. And it's just like, I hear that regularly, right? Mm-hmm. So, thinking about it from what is the end game? How many tickets do we need to sell? And again, going through that calculation that I mentioned earlier, like that's really enlightening and like really valuable for folks to kind of think about it from that perspective, because it's just not very common. But the other one would be like, even like at a high level, most event producers should budget around 15 to 20% of their gross potential revenue at sellout just for marketing, right? Like, that's kind of like they're all in, right? That's a good rule of thumb. And that's easy. Anybody can do that and start there. I think that's like a good, healthy benchmark. But I also encourage people to take that next step and look at it from like an acquisition cost perspective. And there should be a goal, like they would understand most often what their average order value is. And if they don't, then again, just go back to their average ticket price and multiply that by 2.7. And that should give you like basically what each conversion is worth. It will typically cost for a good campaign about 20% of the average order value to acquire a customer.
Okay.
Right. So if you kind of do that math, for every $20 that you spend, they should be generating about $100 worth of ticket sales revenue.
Okay.
And so if they can look at that and say like, all right, great. Our goal is this many orders or this many ticket sales, right? Just compare that to your acquisition costs. And that should give you a good sense of how you are budgeting with your advertising investment and also the potential margin. It's like, that's just front end stuff before you even book the show and confirm it. that most don't do. And that then can really tee up success or failure before you even go on sale.
I like it. And that's where I think a lot of people, whether you're looking at the entertainment industry or pick your industry, is we don't know our numbers and we don't know our budgets. And so most businesses say, I want to grow or I want to accomplish X, but their budget for marketing is 10% of what it actually should be.
Totally. Yep. And it's just, it's again, a reliance on either this is how we've always done it, or this is what the marketplace is doing, or whatever. It's not truly going through the exercise of what is your math, right?
100%. So when you take all of the entertainment industry and the ups and downs and the constant campaigns because you're on constant tours, what does sustainable growth actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that retention and seeing fans return show after show is a really, really great metric for sustainable growth, right? In entertainment industry aside, it always costs more to win a new customer or fan, in our case, than it does to continue to renew and deliver value over time with them, and it will expand the lifetime revenue that you see from them, right? And so that's where growth comes from, and sustainable growth is if you have fans that return year after year to your event, or for a venue are consistently turning up to shows, that is absolutely an indicator that you're doing something right. Right, and you're delivering something that they see enough value in, not just once, and so that expands that relationship. That gives you so much more opportunity to give them ammo to then encourage their friends and family to then experience what they've been experiencing. I really am a big believer in that the product is the best marketing. And so, what we do is we kind of just amplify what's being offered and what that experience is. And if it sucks, then people are going to talk about it. And then makes our job a lot tougher. And so, that's a hard conversation sometimes.
It's hard to say, hey, your show's not good. Yeah. Like that's a rough conversation to have. So when people are evaluating, was my marketing good or was my show less than stellar? What are good retention numbers for this person is coming back to my show again? Am I looking at 10%? Am I looking at 70%? What's good numbers in that space? Yeah, I mean,
it's tough because when you're talking about like a festival versus a tour or something like that, annual events, it really does widely vary. I mean, I would like to think that if you're having about 20 to 25% of your audience return year after year, like it's pretty good. That's not too shabby. But I think that. I think, beyond just certainly the retention to like how much people are spending with you over their lifetime as well is like obviously a real key figure. So, understanding who's going to spend the most with you and how frequently with you, like that's a really great audience segment to more deeply understand instead of kind of just blanketing the same message to everybody.
Yep.
Like that's something in our world too that's really, really, really key. Is like giving those super fans the opportunity to buy more and spend more with you sooner than the general public. Like that's a real great profit center.
Yep. And looking at what is your overall customer lifetime value across ticket sales, across merch, across you name it, because you think about like retention for somebody who's a smaller indie band that is touring where tickets are $20 to $150 versus I'm only going to pay once to go see Taylor Swift for $1,500.
Totally.
Taylor Swift, her retention, Okay, besides the fact that it's Taylor Swift, in theory, somebody that's that big,
Sure.
even if they're coming to Nashville, because everybody comes to Nashville, I may only go see her once across the next 10 years.
Right.
But if it's a musician that I love, tickets are $50, $100, whatever. Every time they come to Nashville, I'm going to try to see them, assuming they have decent new music. So it's also like not just the retention numbers, but also, like you had mentioned, what's the overall lifetime value of a customer for me?
Exactly. And if you know that, if you know your metrics there, right, then you can also understand a little bit more about your acquisition costs. And it's like, well, if I know that they're going to be spending this much with me on average over their lifetime, and that's, includes how many times they're coming and blah, 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 right? If you understand that piece of it, well, now you know how much you can invest to win the next one. So that's a recipe for success right there, and sustainable growth.
I like it. Brian, I have one last question for you. What is the one question you wish I would have asked you, but I didn't?
Well, I think why don't we touch on why people don't buy tickets most commonly, right? And those roadblocks, and because we talked about the fan funnel formula and kind of viewing that journey that a fan goes through, and really focusing on, all right, regardless of source and marketing channel, it's what are they doing once they're there, once they're at the destination. And so why don't they convert more regularly? And so there are typically three things that we see that's at the root cause of that. And so usually it's price sensitivity. That's usually the most common. So there's a pricing disconnect. There's a lack of scarcity or urgency, right? So there's just not that need to commit now. Okay. And then the last would be like a value perception problem, right? They just don't feel like this gives enough bang for their buck. And so those are the main problem children. Those are the things that, I think event producers and marketers really need to focus on. And if you know what the issues, the most common issues are, well, then you can develop solutions for those. And so we, are regularly implementing kind of tests and things from a variety of, flash sales or different language or, whatever, to help, again, defeat those most common roadblocks into conversions. So
out of those three roadblocks, which one's the most common and what's the solution?
So price sensitivity is the most common.
Okay.
And I'll add to that value perception is the most problematic, because that does get into the conversation around, well, maybe what you're offering in this event is just, again, it could be a product problem. And that's much more difficult to combat than pricing. So with pricing, there's an opportunity for us to do a variety of things. So for instance, we work with a bunch of concert cruises. There's a big price tag when it comes to, a 7-day cruise and kind of, that hurdle. You're dealing with a luxury product, and with that comes, several $1,000s of commitment per person, with a minimum of, at least 2 or 3 people, right? So it's a lot to overcome. And so the conversions are usually pretty low compared to, other more standard priced events. So there's an opportunity in that case. We've found success in repositioning how we present the price. So it's not just, $5,000. It's this, this much per day, right? And just like reframing the price can often help. Or in other situations, it's you're usually spending $100 to see one band at a whatever. Well, with this festival, it equates to just $5 a band, because there are 30 bands playing, that kind of stuff. There's different ways to frame things to help with the perception of the price, but also even the price itself, right? Like, there's too many times where, the event producer sets a price and it's, they're not using the power of 9. Like, there's like psychological things that help, again, with the perception, or the price is presented with like bigger font than everything else, or bigger, bolder font. And there's a perception of that's more expensive than if it were written and
Yep.
presented differently. So like there's things like that that just help combat that.
Okay, cool. I love it. I think we're going to pause there and we'll talk about the other two later on in another podcast episode. Brian, thank you so much for coming on this show today. If people would like to connect with you further, what is the best way for them to find you?
BauerEntertainmentMarketing.com. It's got a bunch of resources, case studies. I mentioned about kind of calculating ad spend and things like that. We have free calculators on there. I think that would be a really great place to start. But yeah, hit us up.
I love it. To know your numbers at the end of the day.
Know your numbers.
Awesome. For everyone tuning in today, thank you so much for joining, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Humans of Growth.